Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Talks in Class. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am Jenna, your host. Happy to be here for another episode, another week. Honestly, it's been a week over here. It's been just sort of a long, kind of stressful week, lots of stuff going on, just work stuff, personal stuff, one of those times when things are just like not going super well. So I've been trying to keep myself a little bit more on a routine day to day. Structure is just kind of a difficult thing for me in general. It's not built into my schedule because I work for myself. So nobody's telling me what to do or when to do it. And I'm just like, as a human, I'm very all over the place. If I get an idea, I have to run with it right away, or I like to be able to run with it right away. So I am trying to hold myself a little bit more to a routine and a schedule, including scheduling times where I actually leave the house, building that into my routine. And this is just sad, but it's actually kind of funny to think about. When I was young, I was always out. I loved that. And now as an adult, I have somehow gotten to the point where I have to schedule leaving the house on my Google Calendar as an appointment, or I just won't leave ever. Jury's out on whether that's actually helping me stick to my schedule any better or be more productive or anything like that, but I'm trying. And other than that, it's just kind of the usual around here, basically. We went to a flea market over the weekend and I found some good stuff, as always. I found a really good Rolling Stone magazine issue from 2004. It's like a special edition with a bunch of really cool, iconic photos in it and some good CDs, which is always exciting. And I have been wanting to thrift a vintage fur coat or like a faux fur coat, but I had a really specific image in mind of what I wanted. I didn't want like the mob wife aesthetic winter coat kind that we've been seeing a lot on social media. I wanted more of like a short, almost like a bomber jacket, like, like a faux fur, short, like cute, sassy, like bomber jacket. And I found it at the flea market. I was so excited. It's black. It's really cute. It's perfect. I just have to get it dry cleaned, and then I'm going to be wearing that everywhere. So if you see me out and I'm wearing that same little black fur bomber every day, don't worry about it. Mind your business. It's going to be my whole personality. Speaking of exciting things, I will start as always with my what good happened. And aside from the jacket, which of course was very good, my what good happened this week was that my good friend came to town this past week unexpectedly, just for a couple days, but that was really fun. And it's always fun to have an unexpected friend in town. We went to dinner with a couple of other friends on, I think it was Wednesday. This is another thing that makes me realize how different adult Jenna is from teenage Jenna. Going out to dinner on a weekday for me now is extra special. It's like borderline shocking behavior. I do know plenty of people who are weeknight happy hour people or weeknight dinner people, but I'm just not really usually one of them. After working all day, I like to sit in silence in my sweatpants, usually. But obviously, I didn't want to miss an opportunity to see a friend who was only in town for a couple of days and then also have dinner with a couple of other friends. And it was so fun. And it's also one of the best parts, I will say, about living in places like New York or LA for most of my adult life is that people do often visit those places. So it's always fun to be able to meet up with somebody when they're in town for whatever reason. This week's episode could almost be kind of a continuation of last week's episode about brunch culture, which was about kind of social media and pop culture trends of the 2010s, especially for millennials and especially for millennial women. And I've been thinking a lot more about different trends and stuff of the 2010s, but even beyond the early 2010s and getting now into thinking about the mid 2010s and even the later 2010s, which got me thinking about one trend that is definitely still hanging on now, but really exploded into kind of the millennial zeitgeist during the early to mid 2010s, largely with the help of social media. And that is wellness culture and athleisure as fashion. If the late 2000s and the very early 2010s were about partying and just sort of a general sense of debauchery following the indie sleaze and Jersey Shore eras, I would say the mid to late 2010s were all about wellness because, as it so often does, the pendulum swung in the most extreme directions during this decade. And looking back at my own experience, once again, my specific age seemed to align just so perfectly with these overall trends, so much so that it's actually hard to separate the greater cultural trends from my own personal experiences and just preferences. I turned 21 in 2008, just as the economy crashed and pop culture and fashion just generally kind of took a darker turn. This was the time when pictures of ultra thin, like unhealthy looking celebrities wearing ultra skinny jeans, existing what seemed like solely on cigarettes and black coffee, were extremely glamorized in the media. I mean, I can't tell you how many photos of Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen in their NYU days I drooled over during this time. And every single one of them, I mean, they looked a mess. Let's just say it. Messy hair, smudged eyeliner, chipped nail polish, always in black or like dark red, clothes that were way too big, like the big scarves wrapped around, always, always, always with a giant hot coffee and probably a cigarette. But that was the vibe at the time. And during the Jersey Shore era a few years later, which really was such a specific cultural moment, especially in the year 2010, I was in my early 20s, so I was doing the same things, just not probably as extreme, but generally doing the same things as the cast of Jersey Shore. You know, I was partying, I was wearing tacky clothes and bad hair extensions, spray tanning and whatever. But as we moved through the decade and I moved into my mid-20s, the vibe also culturally shifted in this really major way. And I know just recently, like in the last few years, we've started hearing the term clean girl used really widely on social media to describe those girls who just kind of wear all white and beige and, you know, very minimal makeup and whatever. This term is relatively new, but mark my words, the clean girl as we know her today was born in the 2010s, okay? Like the white, rich, wellness girly, she was born in the 2010s. Alongside these massive cultural trends of athleisure as fashion, and not just fashion, but status symbol fashion, and boutique fitness studios, which also very much served as status symbols, and just kind of wellness in general being trendy. So let's go back in time, shall we? Let me set the scene for you. It is 2015. Good For You by Selena Gomez is playing through the corded headphones of your iPhone 6 as you walk down the streets of New York City, or whatever city, in your favorite mesh cutout aloe yoga leggings with your Lululemon zip-up hoodie that you're wearing over your SoulCycle branded sports bra top. You're carrying a canvas tote from the hot new athleisure brand Outdoor Voices, which sells monochromatic matching leggings and crop top sets that retail well over $100. They have a pop-up in Soho, which you saw on Instagram, and that's obviously how you learned about this brand in general. You have a jumbo-sized smart water and a few makeup essentials inside a pink plastic Glossier pouch tucked into your little canvas tote bag, and you go to SoulCycle, where you have paid $36 for a single 45-minute class, plus $3 to rent shoes, obviously, and you take your seat on a coveted front row bike. This spot in the front row at SoulCycle, wearing a SoulCycle branded article of clothing with your $100 leggings, signals to everyone around you that you are elite. You are important, you're part of the club. After class, you snap a pic of the neon sign in the lobby that says SoulCycle and then Tribe and Pack and things like that underneath it so that you can post it on your Instagram, because obviously if you didn't take a pic for the gram, did it really happen? No. In 2015, the answer was no. And whether or not you personally experienced this sort of niche corner of culture during that time that was the boutique fitness thing, there is really no denying its reach or its impact that it had on pop culture in the 2010s. One thing that always comes to mind whenever I think of the boutique fitness thing in the 2010s is in the first season of Broad City, which, talk about a 2010s just classic. But in the first season of Broad City, which was 2014, I think, Abby works at a spinning studio that is pretty clearly supposed to be SoulCycle. And the instructors will stop her in the hallways to tell her to clean up some disgusting mess. And then they'll say namaste before they walk away. And it's just such a great spoof of kind of the vibe at these studios at the time. Schitt's Creek also very, very cleverly spoofed this idea a few years later in the episode where Alexis brings all of the women to a group fitness class that, again, is pretty clearly influenced by SoulCycle. And it turns out to be a cult, like an actual cult, where she's unknowingly recruiting people to be in the cult. And this makes total sense because if you've ever heard of SoulCycle or, you know, any of those trendy studios from that time, SoulCycle, Barry's, Flywheel, RIP, Bar Method, you know, whatever, you've probably heard them compared to cults. They all had this very culty quality to them in the way that the people who took the classes were not there to just work out. They were using the brands behind the studios to really form their identities in a big way. And, you know, this isn't new, obviously. People have been doing this thing for years. People make all sorts of brands core parts of their identities. I mean, car brands, sneaker brands, clothing brands, makeup or just beauty brands, like even celebrities or just fandoms in general, sports teams, like all of these are brands or businesses that people use to form part of their identity that they then express to the world. But there was something about, I think, the mixture of a very high price tag plus the physical exercise component, like something about being physically exhausted, like your body being physically exhausted, plus that cult-like following. I don't know, it just made this whole thing feel a little bit more insidious in some way, at least after a while of it being very, very trendy. It just became this really popular thing to poke fun at in pop culture during that decade. And this is coming from someone who was in it, okay? Like, if boutique fitness was actually a cult, I was a very high-ranking member, okay? Like, I was in it. This was my entire life and actually my career for years. And I can pinpoint the exact moment that my boutique fitness addiction, and by extension, my athleisure clothing addiction, really began. It was summer 2014, bar class in Boston, a cute little studio on Newbury Street, literally above a Starbucks. Like, how perfect. And I remember walking in and just seeing this studio full of like very chic, very skinny, very rich looking women in head to toe matching Lululemon sets. And I was out of my element right away. Like, I did not have an outfit on, and I was active. I was in the fitness world. I taught spin classes. So fitness was not foreign to me by any means, but this place was absolutely a foreign land to me. It was clear to me from the second I set foot in the door that this was not a gym. This was unlike anything that I had ever experienced before. It was something else. It was like a luxury club where you went to be seen, but also to work out. They were definitely there to work out in a very weird way that hurt like nothing I had ever experienced before, which I learned very quickly once the class actually started. But everyone in the class had a blowout and looked fabulous. Like, they looked perfect even after the class. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, this is the secret to all of those hot girls who are running around the streets with their post-workout smoothies still looking flawless after their workouts. And that was just it for me. I was obsessed with all of it. I loved the workout, but I also just loved the thing, you know, the vibes, the whole ordeal of it, like the chic workout clothes and the way the women in the bar class would pull the backs of their leggings down over their heels. I still to this day have no idea why everybody did that, but I absolutely did that for years. And I literally thought it was so chic, like just pulling the leggings down over my feet. I guess it looked kind of ballet-esque. I have no idea. I even bought several pairs of those aloe goddess leggings, I think they were called. They were the ones with the ribbed fabric that the bottom half or the bottom 3/4 of the leggings kind of looked like a leg warmer, and it was all bunched up at the bottom so that you could pull it over your feet. Like, it was intentionally made for that. So anyway, I took this class and I immediately set my sights on teaching bar, and I ended up not just teaching bar, but running studios. And that class, like that one bar class, is really when I entered the cult of athleisure officially. I started buying nicer workout wear after that, which was kind of challenging at the time because we didn't have all the dupes and stuff at that time. Athleisure was still pretty expensive in general, especially if you wanted decent quality. But this is also the period when I started to really embrace athleisure, not just as clothes to work out in as I previously thought about it, but as part of my just everyday casual wardrobe, and therefore putting it together as full outfits, like considering it fashion in a very different way that I never had before. And it was such a contrast to the earlier part of the decade that felt pretty high maintenance for sure in comparison, but the mid 2010s had this big shift to this really more effortless, very casual fashion, especially when you compare it to what came before. It was the clean girl thing before we labeled that aesthetic. Like that's what the trend really was. And my own personal style around this time, it's so funny, like the mid 2010s, 2014, 2015, it was this weird blend of athleisure and just super back to basics kind of hipster kind of fashion. Like I would wear the cheapest skinny jeans I could find at Forever 21. I mean, they were just horrible quality with a slouchy V-neck t-shirt. I had them in every color. I bought them from like Target or Forever 21 with a long necklace with a feather on it or an owl or something. Maybe a useless scarf. Knockoff Wayfarers, also probably from Forever 21. And sandals or a pair of Toms. It was that or full athleisure head to toe. Like those were my two looks around this time. I remember buying every single pair of pattern leggings that I could find at Marshalls and TJ Maxx. We loved pattern leggings during that time. I feel like the pattern leggings died when everything turned to like sad beige, but I had every pattern from a herringbone pattern that I thought was so chic to a pair with pineapples to palm leaves to like tie-dye. I had a snake skin. Actually, I had two snake skin prints. I mean, pattern leggings were everywhere. And by the early to mid 2010s, I was routinely wearing leggings as pants. And this is important because now it seems crazy to think that we ever lived through a time where we did not consider leggings pants. But if you lived through the mid to late 2000s, you may remember leggings at that time were not the leggings of today. We've really come a very long way with leggings. Leggings in 2007 were like flimsy kind of see-through cotton things that you would wear under a denim miniskirt so that you didn't get in trouble for the dress code. Or maybe under one of those weirdly long tunic tops that you weren't 100% sure was a top or a dress. Like that's what leggings were for. I distinctly remember buying this really long t-shirt at Forever 21 in 2009 and asking my roommate if it was long enough to wear with leggings because you had to cover your butt with your shirt if you were wearing leggings. They were not considered pants. Like this was so important, and this was a really hot issue for a while. Like this was a hot take. Some people thought that leggings were pants. Some people didn't. Like whether or not leggings as pants was acceptable was a legitimate controversy amongst young women in the second half of the 2000s. But by the time I entered the boutique fitness, universe, leggings had definitely become a part of my everyday uniform. They were perfectly acceptable as pants. I had adopted leggings and really all athleisure as part of the acceptable rotation of clothing for things like running errands and just casual things like that. And it's really funny when you start to look back on things from years ago that don't feel that long ago, but somehow are that long ago, like anything in the 2010s, but especially the second half of the 2010s. And how when you zoom out and kind of have that hindsight, you can suddenly notice these trends that you just did not see happening at the time, whether it's fashion trends or beauty trends, pop culture trends, whatever it is. While you're living it, it just feels like your life, especially when you're young and you're part of that target demographic for trendy things. When you're young, trendy clothes are just clothes. They're just what people are wearing. But with age and time comes a bit more perspective. And by now, if you're a listener of the pod, you definitely know that I just love thinking about trends. I love talking about them. I love thinking about their origins and like what's happening in society at large that contributes to these trends and how we participate in them, and ultimately how and why they kind of evolve or maybe even just fade away in some cases. So last week I talked about the trend of brunch in the early 2010s, and this almost could be a continuation of that conversation because the topic of wellness and even athleisure as fashion is another conversation about a somewhat social, cultural trend, especially aimed towards young adult women that, in hindsight especially, feels very tied to status and exclusivity and luxury, but also community and a sense of belonging, which I think was really important. And just a lot of these things that I think many of us were really craving, at least to some extent at this point in our lives, when, I don't know, we were kind of beginning to feel cheated out of a young adulthood that we thought we were going to have, largely due to economic factors at the time, right? Similar to the brunch conversation. We started realizing at some point or another in the 2010s when we became adults that we were not going to hit the milestones of adulthood in the same ways that previous generations did. And I think a lot of the cultural trends, like these broader cultural trends of the second half of that decade especially, really reflected a generation of people that were just trying to find something to cling on to that felt like we were able to be successful in some kind of way. Whether it was being able to experience something that felt like luxury or just a feeling of taking care of our health in the case of wellness, or being part of a community of some kind, whatever it was. And boutique fitness studios, I think, checked a lot of those boxes in a lot of the same way that brunch checked multiple boxes for us, like socially at the time. And the athleisure fashion brands were the outward expression of that identity for those of us who were like in the whole thing. So if you were emo in 2005, you would maybe shop at Hot Topic, or you would get like the scene haircut with the side bangs, or you would wear a band t-shirt. Those things told the world who you were, what you identified with, what community you were a part of or considered yourself a part of. The same way that my muted blush toned outdoor voices workout set and my little Soul Cycle tote bag in 2016 told the world that I belonged to the fitness community. And it also told the world that I was rich, even though I was absolutely not rich. And I just had a really good employee discount. And I think this is a really interesting factor about this whole thing. It's also important to note that the rise of this wellness trend seemed to really closely correspond with the rise of the ultra curated Instagram aesthetic that happened in the mid to late 2010s. This time, like, to me, 2017 stands out as kind of the peak of this, but it was this time when everyone was just honestly living total lies on social media. Like, let's be honest about it. There was zero authenticity because that was not a thing that people were striving for at the time because it wasn't trendy. The trendy thing on social media was like super aspirational, like girl boss kind of content. You know, it was these walk-in closets that were beautifully curated, full of designer clothes with this long caption about girl bossing your way to the top so that you can, I don't know, buy a McMansion and fill it with a pink chair in your closet and a bunch of Chanel bags. I don't know. This was the Glossier era, okay? Like, it was girl boss. And looking back, it was a wild time. The whole girl boss thing really infiltrated so much. And this is another thing that I did not realize at the time until I was looking back at it. But this whole time was when these self-help books and kind of self-help content really exploded. Books like Girl Wash Your Face, which, don't even get me started, or that You're a Badass book, like things like that were everywhere. And this just fit right in with luxury, expensive, matching, neutral toned athleisure outfits and $40 workout class and $12 green smoothies. And fitness instructors at that time kind of started to become a form of celebrity in themselves, like an offline influencer. Like, they were in real life influencers, which, as someone who is in it, is so funny because these classes were obviously very expensive. These studios cost a lot of money. You're talking $200-$300 a month easy to go to these classes. And being a part of the club in general costs a lot of money. Like, the classes were expensive, but then the clothes, the merch was expensive. They were located in expensive neighborhoods, in expensive cities. I mean, there's so much that's just tied to money and status and things like that. But instructors, for the most part, not all of them obviously, but for the most part, instructors were really not paid very well. Most instructors that I knew, including myself, were really having to teach pretty crazy and kind of unsustainable class loads in order to just make basic ends meet, especially in a place like New York City. And it kind of got to the point where it was physically pretty bad for your body, like especially if you were teaching something like spin where you had to physically do the class with them. Like this isn't great for your body. So it created this really interesting dynamic where these instructors were viewed as kind of celebrities, but even gurus at certain studios and stuff, who were exemplifying this lifestyle, outwardly at least, that they were not living at all. And I have zero shame in saying that I fully became a bar instructor because I was broke and I wanted to take the classes for free because I couldn't afford to pay for them. And I gotta say, the perks were really good because not only did I take classes at my studios where I worked for free, a lot of the fitness studios would allow staff from other fitness studios all to take classes at their studios for free. So I took free fitness classes all over New York City for years. Like all of those SoulCycle classes that I took riding in the front row next to some Real Housewife, I did not pay for probably 98% of them, like $0. Even the smoothie place gave us discounts. Like it was a whole thing. So we weren't paying for this luxury wellness lifestyle that we were promoting. I could not have even afforded it at the time. Like I couldn't have paid for it if I didn't get it for free. I couldn't afford it. And I don't think this is any coincidence that this is how it was during this very like do it for the gram, Instagram culture era where wellness was also very trendy. And it's almost like influencer culture now. You know, these influencers are getting thousands of dollars worth of free clothes or free makeup or whatever it is, which makes it look like they're living this luxury life. But behind the scenes, like, who knows? Half of them might not be making any money. Some of them might be making tons, but like, who, you don't know because it's not really real. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying boutique fitness studios were bad in any way or that wellness was bad, but trends by nature are rooted in exclusivity. And this was very trendy at the time. Wellness, fitness, luxury was very trendy at the time. But once there was a Pure Barre and an Orange Theory and a yoga studio in every suburban town in America, you know, it lost its luster a little bit. Just like any trend, you know, that's how the cycle works. It's exclusive, it becomes available to the masses, and then it falls off in favor of something else. But trendiness aside, I loved it. Like truly, I still love boutique fitness, but that era is really one of the most fun times I've ever had in my life. You know, I was in my 20s. I wore leggings to work every day and sneakers. I would take a workout class in the middle of my work day. I got to mostly just hang out and talk to people and like pop around to other businesses around New York to network for pop-ups and like cross-promotional things and just in general soak up all the vibes in these like bougie little studios. And mark my words, they were a vibe. This 2010s like athleisure wellness aesthetic still holds such a special place in my heart, but so many of the studios really did the exact same things. Like it was very formulaic when I look back on it. There were a lot of emojis and branding, like a lot of cheeky signs outside of Pilates studios with the peach emoji, you know, like hint, hint, we're gonna make your butt look good. So they put a peach emoji on it, or the sweat emoji was a big one. There was almost always, like 99% of the time, a neon sign inside the studio. I mean, it was just begging for Instagram. There was always a really cute, very identifiable color palette. I mean, they were branded very, very well. So like some studios were hot pink, some were blue or yellow or whatever the color scheme was. A lot of them had a mirror somewhere that had some sort of decal on it that would say something cute, but it was backwards so that when you took a selfie in the mirror, you could read it. Again, just Instagram fodder. And they all had super luxurious locker rooms stocked with like ridiculously high-end products. This almost became a mandatory thing, but when I say high-end, I mean like SoulCycle has Le Labo shampoo in the showers. That shampoo is $60 a bottle. I remember at one studio where I managed, we bought all of this really nice stuff for the bathrooms, and we ended up having to take almost all of it out of the bathrooms because people stole. I mean, they stole the craziest things. They would steal handfuls of hair ties and the tampons. Like, we would restock the tampons constantly all day because people would just take the thing and like dump it in their bag. I remember one time somebody wiped out our entire stock of Claron dry shampoo, which is like the best dry shampoo I've ever tried, but it's expensive. So we had bought, I don't know, several cans of it, and we put it away in a cabinet, and somebody went in there and took all of it. Like they stole all of it. People even stole the hand soap. They would take literally anything they could get their little hands on. And it was like, you're paying $300 a month for fitness classes, but you're stealing hair ties and hand soap. But I don't know, that's just how it was. But even so, like your studio had to have these amenities. You had to have the luxury stuff to go with the price tags of the classes. It was all part of the experience. It was all part of like the thing, right? The club. And they always smelled super good too, the studios. Usually, again, some sort of signature, like identifiable scent. SoulCycle has a signature candle scent. I mean, I could smell it and know instantly that that's SoulCycle. Y7 Yoga, where I also worked, had a signature candle. And these were things also that you could buy as a client of the studio in case you want your home to smell like your fitness studio. Which brings me to the retail section. These studios were like specialty retail boutiques for high-end athleisure brands so that you could shop at the same place that you worked out. And they would carry all the trendiest brands, like stuff that you otherwise would only see at really specialty boutiques, specialty, I guess, fitness or athleisure retailers. And this was a really important element of the business because you had to look the part if you were taking these classes. There was an unofficial uniform of boutique fitness at the time, the mid to late 2010s wellness girly uniform. It was full length, not capris, full length leggings, Lululemon, Alo Yoga, Beyond Yoga, Outdoor Voices. I don't know. There are a handful of other like really trendy, very expensive brands that were popular around the time, like UltraCore. UltraCore made those star leggings that were really, really popular. They were like $200, but everybody loved them. And then on top, it was a sports bra that matched the leggings with a flowy muscle tank style tank top over it. And this was really important. Your tank top had to be cut really low under the arms so that you could see the sports bra that it matched the leggings. This was crucial. Sometimes the muscle tank was a high-low cut where it was higher in the front and then it hung over your butt a little bit on the back. We loved a high-low anything in the 2010s. Or maybe it was all one length, then you tie a little knot in it on the corner, like by your hip bone. And it usually had some sort of graphic or like a fitness pun on it. Things like bar so hard or will plank for pizza, which I owned. Inhale, exhale. Or the one that everybody lost their minds over for a minute and everybody thought was so clever. It was a tank top that said, "But did you die?" Like, what? I had so many of these tank tops. I can't even tell you. There was this brand called J that made them, and I think now they make hair clips and like hair accessories. You can buy them on Revolve now, but they made all of these tank tops, especially the bar themed ones, and I had so many of them. I bought every single one. Things that said "see you at the bar" or like "barista" or whatever. And I felt so cool in these tank tops. But then to complete the uniform, very importantly, you had to wear a top knot in your hair. If you had short hair, maybe you'd do like a half bun. So just the top half of your hair was in a little knot on top of your head. But if you had any hair that was long enough to go up, it had to be in a top knot. This was important. I remember one time I literally took a picture of my bun on top of my head and the photo was just pretty much my forehead and up, showing my little bun, and then my hand off to the side making the peace sign. And I posted that on Instagram. I thought that was really artsy. But whatever. Anyway, this was the uniform and I loved it. I ate this all up 100%. And the whole athleisure thing, despite being expensive, probably more expensive than it had any business being, and very rooted in things like exclusivity and kind of faux luxury. When I look back, a lot of this feels very kind of faux luxury or like Instagram, you know, it was a facade. But despite all of that, that kind of was realized as this became more and more mainstream, the athleisure thing was fun. I feel like it was a great switch up from what we had in the early 2010s. And it's really interesting now, almost a decade, or really it's 2024. So a decade later, we are finally seeing that pendulum start to swing again, where we've been in this decade of ultra casual fashion, sneakers, athleisure, a lot of basics, and we're starting to see things like people talking about the mob wife aesthetic trending, you know, complete opposite side of the spectrum, where it's very maximalist, it's very high maintenance, and it's always interesting to me to see where my mindset is when these trends start to come around, because I have always been somebody who enjoys trends, but I also just like a lot of variety. So I'm excited for the switch to the maximalist fashions, the same way that I remember feeling excited about the switch from the more maximalist looks into these more subdued, casual athleisure fashions. And you know, that's what it comes down to for me when I look back at this stuff, is enjoyment and like personal fun. And it was fun. But the best part of the whole wellness, fitness, girly scene in the 2010s, hands down, especially from my perspective as someone who was an instructor, was the music. 2010s music was literally made for fitness classes, and it was a magical time, just a magical moment in time that brought these two things together. So to wrap this up, I'm going to leave you with the list as usual, but I couldn't narrow this down even to a longer list. So this is going to be a rapid fire list of songs that I can think of that instantly transport me back to a 2010s fitness class anytime I hear them. I can almost feel like the Soul Cycle choreo in my body when I hear these songs. Okay, here we go. Clarity by Zed. Oh my God, talk about Soul Cycle. Like, I can't. Wake Me Up by Avicii. Sorry by Justin Bieber takes me straight back to fitness in that era. Stay the Night by Zed. Zed really had some bangers at that time. Problem by Ariana Grande and Iggy Azalea. How did I forget about Iggy Azalea? She had such a brief moment in time. Anything by Ellie Goulding, but especially Lights, like that song, talk about a pump up jam. Like, put that on, do some cardio. I Took a Pill and Ibiza by Mike Posner. Oh my God. Bang Bang by Jessie J. What happened to Jessie J? We Found Love by Rihanna. Can't beat that. Move Your Body by Sia. Oh my God. Roses by the Chainsmokers. That song transports me to like a different consciousness. I can't explain it, but that is easily one of the best songs that came out of that decade. Like, I don't know. There's just something very special to me about that song. Never Forget You by Zara Larsson. Zara Larsson had a lot of bangers during this time too. When a Fire Starts to Burn by Disclosure. Do you guys remember that song? Side to Side by Ariana Grande. That's a good spin song. Lean On by Major Lazer. Lush Life by Zara Larsson. Talk Dirty by Jason Derulo. Really anything by Jason Derulo. Love Myself by Haley Steinfeld. That's a good one. Going Down for Real by Flo Rida. Anything by Flo Rida really feels made for a workout class. Turn Down for What? I think that's Lil Jon. I didn't write down who it was. Into You by Ariana Grande. Talkin' Body by Tovlo. And then there were a bunch of remixes to Talkin' Body by Tovlo. So good. Hand Clap by Fits and the Tantrums. This Is What You Came For by Calvin Harris. Oh my God, I auditioned for a cycling studio to that song, and I could probably still do the entire song's choreo if I put it on right now. Hands to Myself by Selena Gomez. Cool for the Summer by Demi Lovato. Oh my God. Fast Car by Jonas Blue. Cheap Thrills by Sia. And okay, this one just really takes me to another time. I Want You to Know by Zed and Selena Gomez. I have to put these on a Spotify playlist. I'll do that for you guys so that you can time travel to different fitness classes in the 2010s with me. And now I want to put on some patterned leggings and grab my rose gold swell bottle and go to Soul Cycle. So does anybody want to go with me? Let me know. I really hope you guys like this one. I've been very clearly vibing with the 2010s lately, and this was just such a big part of my life at that time, so this was a really fun one. But if you enjoyed this, I would so appreciate it if you share it with a friend. Maybe share it with your workout buddy. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'll be back with you next week. I will talk to you then. Bye!